Empire. This lesson is the world's first empire. It's how to unlock the power of being an emperor. So how do you think this guy's going to do it? What do you have to have? He was just a gardener. He knew how to tell the right type of story, and he has a really cool name. So he won't be the last, but is he the first best? I'm Mr. Hall. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom for your journey. Now, have you felt like you were a part of something really special, like a team, your family, your school, and it gave a true sense of loyalty to your motivations, to your heart? You'd do anything for this. Now, does that loyalty actually invent or create a new level of power? This lesson, we have to journey back in time to ancient Mesopotamia, where the fertile plains brought all kinds of an abundance of success for the first civilizations of the world. This is the land where civilization was born. But in these cities, there's conflict, there's competition. People had to be loyal to their city-state, and we're going to see how certain ambitious leaders with a hunger for power are going to try to take control of many places. And our leader today, to start all of this, is going to make the world's first empire, forging something that the world had never seen before, but is going to see many times throughout history. And you, as a classical scholar, will identify and see what is the intention of power itself, and what about building something that truly lasts. This is some understanding that we need to get a sense of our place in the world, our society, our city, our nation, and how it matters to you. Because how these ancient rulers created and held their power, it's still being used today. And this one ruler, a legendary king, is going to uncover the secret about life and death and legacy and empire. So stay all the way to the end so that you get a full understanding of how to build power and create the world's first empire. This is lesson number 7 in your ancient history course. We're stepping into the story of the forge of empires to ask the big question and discover how it shapes history and how it still shapes your journey. So in this lesson, first, let's reveal the hidden weaknesses in the world's first cities that left them vulnerable to being taken over. Second, we should uncover the revolutionary blueprint that one man used to build one empire, the first one in the world, completely from scratch. Third, we should compare the different ways ancient civilizations from Babylon, from Egypt, defined and used power to create similar empires. And finally, let's discover a powerful truth about leadership and legacy and the world's oldest epic story. So by the end of this episode, this lesson will help make you a better classical scholar, to become a philosopher, an economist, and one step further in your classical journey. Back to that question about loyalty, your team, your family, the school that you would have such loyalty for. Have you been a part of something like that made it even feel like its own little world? Maybe like a strong identity where you would look outside of that circle, outside of that group, and you would see there's rivals. There's rivals to your own traditions or your own sense of loyalty. What do you think would happen if someone from the outside tried to make your team, your group, merge with the biggest rivalry? How would that be possible? What would you even have to do? So it's really a situation that we find ourselves in ancient Sumer, in Mesopotamia, these places that you've already studied. And I want you to consider how to get these different groups together, why you would do it, how these rivals would end up wanting to be a part of something. And that's kind of what an empire is. Before there were empires, Mesopotamia showed us that people wanted to live in their independent city-state. They wanted agriculture. They wanted success. These are the cities like Uruk, Kish, Lagash. They were the originals, and they were self-contained universes. Each had its own king, its own army, and its own patron god that they held up real high. The government was a theocracy. The theocracy means that the kings are like priest kings, and they've got religion intertwined with the bureaucracy, the clay tablets that are writing the business records and tracking things. And so this temple, the ziggurat, not just for worship. It really was the entire center of the hustle and bustle of these successful cities, the economy. Things were tracked and stored and everything. It's a system. And yours is good. Like your ziggurat should be taller. It's like you're building this mountain and you are prideful, you are loyal, but things go wrong. This deep loyalty is going to create kind of a weakness. Can you think of what that would be like? So think about what that sense of loyalty, and if I used sports teams as that loyalty, because especially when the heat of the contest is on, you're going to just be insanely competitive and fired up. Now, how could that create a weakness? Because it does. These city-states that share the Euphrates River, the Tigris River, they are constantly fighting with each other. And this doesn't happen in other places. It is unique to Mesopotamia with this kind of constant fighting and the way they deal with their environment. The Tigris and the Euphrates, they are tightly packed in. They rely on two things: the success of this fertile land and the need for the water. An upstream city that's a rival of yours could do things downstream. They could divert water. They could create a threat for you. The open plains of this area, remember that there aren't stones. They're not king of the hill opportunities. The way the geography, the topography, you would have to build your own walls. So there was endless conflict in these areas. There was constant fighting. There were rivalries. And it's an unexpected result that while each city-state had strength on its own, as a group, this is fragile. This is early civilization, and we're coming up on the 2400 BC, 2300 BC century in this story, because they've been around for well over 1,000, 2,000 years. They've had plenty of success, but as populations grow, more problems arise. So these people and their very identity that's so tied to their local city and their local god, you could never imagine uniting with people further upstream. The Sumerians in the south, Uruk and Kish, they are Sumerian, and they don't have an identity that's shared with the people to the north, Akkad. Akkad is different than them. And they don't have to, they trade with them, but they don't have to deal with them. But this is the setup for the world's first emperor, who will not come from and Sumer. He's going to come from upstream. He's going to come from up north. City-states in Sumer were strong, they were independent, but they were trapped in their own endless conflict, kind of weakened, and essentially there's a power vacuum down there that's going to make a northern leader come down, conquer Sumer, and create the world's first empire. Is that going to add value? Is that going to make things better? Segment 2 is the blueprint, the empire blueprint. How to be an emperor. Well, first you need to know the definition of the word empire. An empire is two different states, two or more states united under one government. You know, a state is a nation. It's not, the United States like Ohio and Michigan. Now, that would be an interesting, those are rival states, right? Michigan and Ohio. whether it's college football or anything that's kind of a rivalry that actually has some history to it. They actually had a little fight over the border. But I digress. The word state means nation. And when you have multiple nations under one government, and typically it's one person, one emperor or empress, then you have an empire. Is it a better system? Is it an improvement? Could you think right now, what would be the advantage to having an empire? Put it in the comment right now, just to be a good scholar, to add the idea of improvement. Why is this a system? Why does this happen so many times in history? Because this is the first, but it will not be the last. Sargon is the world's first emperor, and he saw there would be advantages by uniting these different kind of rival city-states. Sargon. That's a good name, right? To be an emperor, you should probably have some good messaging, some good marketing, a good name. Sargon of Akkad. His story is legend, partly about his upbringing. He was abandoned in a basket floating in the river. He gets rescued by gardeners and raised with very humble beginnings. That's a good way to build up your power a little bit. Is it easier to be loyal to somebody like that? Or do you just like a tough name like Sargon? Sargon. So he rises from obscurity and becomes the king of Kish. He's going to be able to conquer all the Sumerian city-states, but the conquering part was relatively easy because just with the strong army, the good strategy, he could do that. But the problem is, how do you get the rival teams to play for you? How can you get them to be loyal to Sargon? So Sargon's got to solve this problem. He can't just be another king. He's got to be a new type of ruler. Find ways to unite people. And that's the blueprint. Blueprint for how to be an empire. And it's going to be copied for thousands of years. People are going to learn these lessons. He is creating a standing army that is loyal to him, and 5,400 soldiers are going to be loyal to Sargon, not just where they live, not just their place, their identity. So he's building a permanent tool of power. He's going to tear down some of the old power structures and replace local priest kings with the Akkadian governors. He's Sargon of Akkad, and he brings Akkadian governors downstream and puts them in charge of things and builds a brand new capital city, Akkad. And Akkad is now the center of everything. What do you do? How do you create? So he's created a new focus, kind of a national identity. If it's I shouldn't have said national there, an Akkadian identity. It's not quite to nation yet, because he's going to use legend and religion. He's going to use successful trade, a tax system where he's going to get to keep a lot of money. But look, the problem with army, you can't really force people to be loyal. You can't force them. It's very difficult. People try. But it's not easy, because their hearts and their minds are their own. Sargon's resolution now is going to be pure genius if he can pull this off. So he's going to create this story. He claims that this wasn't by force. He's not doing this by force. He has been chosen by the goddess Ishtar. Oh, divine appointment, the divinity. How do you become a god? Or how do you get extra power? Ishtar is a goddess that everybody worships. Did you already predict this? There's so many gods in polytheistic societies. Are some of them shared? Are some of them admired? Ishtar, everybody worships, not just one place. So his personal myth turns him into the conqueror that follows the divine appointment, that's a hero of all the people. Does that make sense? a way to bring people together. Yes. So let's say it's not Brutus Buckeye, the mascot of the Ohio State. It's not Sparty the Wolverine, not Sparty the Spartan. We like him too. But create a whole different uniting kind of a mascot that somehow combines both of them, like a Wolverine that eats Buckeyes. That wouldn't work. No, bad example. Let's move on. Because Sargon is brilliant. He knows how to blend the Akkadian culture into Sumerian. He's going to even alter the language, and the cuneiform is going to shift towards the Akkadian version. He appoints his own daughter as the high priestess in the major Sumerian religious center of the south. He symbolically merges the two cultures into one new imperial identity. What is imperial? It's like the word empire. It describes this new identity. So if this journey into the world's first empire is starting to make sense to you, take a moment to click the like button, because this is a foundational lesson, and you should really like the word empire, not necessarily because you live in one, but because it's a huge part of history, the rise and fall of power and empire. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, and don't miss out on classicalkingdoms.com for the full course experience, because there's free deep dive research downloads on these topics and interactive lessons. So Classical Kingdoms on YouTube, classicalkingdoms.com for your complete 72 lessons of this ancient history course. In segment 3, let's go beyond. Let's see if this blueprint is going to hold together, because Sargon's empire was built on his own charisma, his understanding of people. They want the story, they want the legend, the narrative. But what happened when he died? That's it. That was it. All this buildup, and Sargon does not have a legacy that he passes down. Hey, relax. It's early in history. There'll be plenty of empires, bigger and better ones, that are going to really last. So we have to skip ahead a few hundred years to see what kind of powerful repeat would we have. Centuries later in Mesopotamia, we've got Hammurabi. Hammurabi of Babylon. Hammurabi is a brilliant conqueror, so he's got armies, he's got a way to win, but he knows something that's been going on for quite some time, even back to the time of Sargon and Akkad. He's got an understanding, and he sees some problems, and he wants to fix them and create stability that's going to last beyond just him. What kinds of problems is he seeing? And what kinds of playbook or blueprint copies will he want to make from Sargon? So let's do the God thing first. Ishtar is a good idea. Hammurabi takes the patron god of his city, Marduk, Marduk. Marduk is elevated to become the king of all the gods. So Hammurabi from Babylon takes Marduk and makes Marduk now the god of the gods. If you're familiar with Greek mythology, it's Zeus now. Zeus is the head of the gods. Is that going to bring religious unity? Because now this is religious justification, divine appointment again for Babylon to be the ruler over all these cities. And when he creates his newest version of written law code, it's the first best. 282 laws that are going to get carved into stone. And that this is a preview for lesson 8. We'll go into depth there. But at the beginning, what does he do? Divine appointment. Marduk empowers Hammurabi, empowers the law. Marduk is the god of, in charge of all the other gods of Mesopotamia. Do you see loyalty? Do you see unity coming from this? Because that's the blueprint that's being established. And preview, you're a classical scholar. Can you think of a time in the future when the exact same thing is going to happen? And if this is new to you, stay in the Classical Kingdoms course, because this is a complete course, whether you're a homeschool student taking this for the first time or a parent. Maybe you are learning this because you got cheated out of it in your previous education. It's a revolutionary concept to use all these ways to unify people, and it creates commonality, an understanding, an identity that goes beyond just cheering for a sports team. This is now law. It's law and morality. It's a framework that binds people together. Everyone, from the noble classes all the way down to the slaves, they're all part of the same team. Family, unity groups. But another problem we need to take a look at is going on in another river civilization to compare empires, to compare the way people are running things during this time period, around the time of Hammurabi, between Hammurabi and Sargon, Egyptian pharaohs. What do you know about Egyptian pharaohs? During the Middle Kingdom period, Egyptian pharaohs were building a different sort of empire. And you can debate whether it's really an empire as to the traditional definition. It's an empire of integration, but an empire of extraction and then border security. They conquered the land of Nubia to the south. They expanded their map not to make the Nubians into Egyptians, not to bring unity, not to blend things together, but just to get control of the rich gold mines. They weren't interested in what Sargon and Hammurabi were trying to do to unify people and gain power that way. Egypt instead just built massive fortresses to secure the border and control the flow of trade and goods. The resolution here is that we see there just isn't one way to be powerful. The playbook, the blueprint is going to be slightly different in different places. The Babylonians built an empire of law. The Egyptians are building an empire with strong borders. They've got deserts, they've got natural protection, and they are keeping the Nubians under control. What about the Phoenicians? They're building an empire of trade, something totally different. When you use the word empire, because they even use that word in college football sometimes, you're building an empire because you're just so strong, you have so much power. The Phoenicians did it in a totally different way. Phoenicians are an empire of trade because they can control the sea with their ships and their valuable goods, and they were so good at sailing around, everybody wanted to get along with them. They were united by their purple fabric, among many other goods that they traded. And to the north, the Hittites are technically going to build an empire, but they do it more with diplomacy and treaties than they are about destroying and overpowering their neighbors. This is a classical journey into history and virtue and wonder. You wonder how empire really matters in the course of history, because kingdoms are going to rise and fall and power is going to fade. Empires will not always be around. But which of these models do you think is most effective? Put it in a comment, because an empire of conquest or strong laws or security or trade or diplomacy, what is your opinion? Let me know your thoughts. It's interesting always to read those, because I've got a favorite I don't want to reveal, but you look at, somebody like Hammurabi, and he's got a lasting legacy. More people have heard of Hammurabi. More people have heard of Egypt. The Phoenicians, more people have been affected by the Phoenicians because of their relationship to the alphabet. We'll learn all of these things, but they are kind of related to this empire concept and might not have happened if there wasn't an empire. In segment 4, let's look at a hero who couldn't conquer death. We've seen how empires are built with armies, laws, stories, unity. But what is all the power even for? What is the point of being the strongest king, the strongest leader in the world? The most profound answer that comes from this region, from this time period, is the world's first great work, legend of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was a real king of the city of Uruk, and his legend lives on. He was a hero. He was 2/3 God, and he was the most powerful man alive. This is Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. He had a problem. He was arrogant, kind of a cruel, oppressive leader. And so the gods created a wild man, Enkidu. Enkidu became his equal. And this unexpected result from dealing with Enkidu, the unexpected result is actually Enkidu doesn't defeat Gilgamesh. Enkidu becomes Gilgamesh's only friend, his best friend, his only friend. And for the first time, the arrogant king learns about people and friendship and understanding the world, understanding life. And that's part of the legend. But the problem that arises is going to be the greatest problem of them all. Enkidu dies. So Gilgamesh, the mighty king who could defeat any monster, is now shattered that his friend and only friend is gone. He is terrified by the one enemy they cannot conquer. And what is the enemy? It's death. To understand life means to understand death. And he abandons his throne, he abandons his power and everything, and goes on a desperate quest to find the secret of eternal life. And there's many other parts to this legend, even the legendary flood of ancient times, a great flood that covers the earth. And Gilgamesh realizes more wisdom than anybody at that time. It's a legend that shows people understanding wisdom. As the world's first hero in the earliest civilizations, what comes at the end? He says it's failure. He fails to find eternal life. He travels to the ends of the earth and meets someone who actually survived the great flood. And he learns that immortality is not for human people. It's only for the divine, for the gods. He even had a magical plant that restores youth, but a snake comes and steals it from him. There's a lot to this legend. Do you understand what these narratives are doing? How narratives and these stories mean so much more to the understanding of life and the people and your empire, or your identity of your community, or who you're loyal to. For Gilgamesh dealing with immortality and thinking that it could be the only thing that matters, it's kind of not. But you do start to sort out what the legacy is. You know, what Gilgamesh hands down to people is like, hey, I've got it already figured out so that you don't have to. And is that a little bit of the wisdom that he picked up and wants to share with you? A little bit of wisdom that you might have, that you have picked up through the suffering, like Gilgamesh, or the suffering of some of these emperors. When Gilgamesh returns to Uruk and becomes wise, a wise and just king, that's what he was meant to be. He had to go through all of these journeys in order to make it to a wise and just position where he has a greater understanding of life. He didn't overcome death, but he sees what the world really is, and he has understanding for it. And all of this, the epic stories of how powerful Gilgamesh is, and Sargon's interesting beginnings, and the other great leaders of these early empires. A legacy that is showing us wisdom and understanding. And that's why, as a classical scholar, you are engaged in this ancient history course, a complete course with classical kingdoms. So what did you learn on this journey through the forge of these early empires? What have you seen from these empires, from the conflicts, the proud and divided city-states, Sargon's strength and cool name and his personal story, and Hammurabi's law codes that unite people, and Gilgamesh's legend that people used for understanding. This is early Bronze Age, Mesopotamia, and these other empires showing us, teaching us, through their memories and innovations, we can carry their wisdom forward into this age. And really, what kind of legacy could you build for yourself? What kind of empire, what kind of loyalties? It's your choice. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history, some classical truth for your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.